The starship drifted slowly through the deep dark sky. Its metal frame was old yet strong. Lights flickered along its sides as it moved closer to a world no human had seen before. The planet below was bright with oceans, deserts, and tall mountain ranges that looked golden under the sun. Clouds curled around its surface like white ribbons. From the windows of the ship, the view was breathtaking. Inside the ship stood Aaron. He was a young man with steady eyes and a calm heart. His uniform was plain, nothing grand or decorated. Unlike many travelers who dreamed of wealth or conquest, Aaron came with a different purpose. He wanted to meet new people and understand their world. The mission was not about war, not about riches, but about connection. When the ship entered the orbit of the planet, a voice filled the cabin. It was a signal from the surface. The words were strange, yet the translator device on Aaron's arm turned them into clear speech. "You are entering the domain of Seralith," the voice said. "Identify yourself." Aaron pressed the device and spoke slowly. "I am Aaron, traveler from Earth. I come in peace. I ask permission to land." For a long moment, no reply came. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the hum of the engines. Then the voice returned, sharper and colder. "Earth is not known to us. You may land, but you will be watched. The Queen will decide your fate." The landing was rough. The ship shook as it passed through thick clouds. When the craft touched the ground, dust rose around it. Through the window, Aaron saw figures waiting. They were tall, with long silver cloaks and sharp spears that glowed faintly in the air. Their faces were narrow, their eyes bright like gems. They stood in perfect lines, disciplined and proud. The door of the ship opened with a hiss. Aaron stepped out, his boots pressing into the soft ground. The air was warm and heavy with the scent of flowers and dust. The guards lowered their spears toward him, not striking but warning. Aaron raised his hands to show he carried no weapon. "I come as a guest," he said, his voice steady. "Take me to your queen." The guards did not reply. One of them, taller than the rest, gave a short command. The group formed a circle around Aaron and guided him toward the city that rose in the distance. The city of Seralith was unlike anything Aaron had seen. Towers of white stone touched the sky, their walls covered with carvings of stars and rivers. Bridges stretched between them like threads of light. The streets were wide, filled with people dressed in colors of gold, green, and blue. They moved with grace, their steps quiet, their eyes curious as they looked at the human in their midst. Some whispered, some frowned, and others stared as if he were a strange animal. At the heart of the city stood the palace. It was a vast structure of crystal and stone, glowing with the colors of the setting sun. The gates were tall, guarded by soldiers in shining armor. The guards opened the gates slowly, as if reluctant to let the visitor pass. Inside, the halls were grand and silent. Tapestries hung from the walls, telling the stories of old battles and long reigns. The air smelled of incense and fresh water. Aaron was led through these halls until he reached the throne room. The throne room was wide and bright, with windows that opened to the sky. At the far end sat the Queen of Seralith. She was tall and regal, her crown a simple band of silver. Her hair fell like a dark river over her shoulders. Her eyes were sharp yet calm. Beside her stood a young woman, the princess, who looked at Aaron with quiet curiosity. The guard stepped back and left Aaron standing alone in the middle of the hall. The Queen's voice filled the room. "You are human," she said, "from a world unknown to us. Few who are strangers have ever walked in this hall. Tell me why you are here." Aaron bowed his head with respect. "I come from Earth, a far place. I do not bring armies or threats. I bring myself, my skills, and my wish to know your people. I ask no riches, no throne, only a chance to learn and to share." The Queen studied him for a long time. The hall was silent, all eyes fixed on the human. Finally she spoke again. "Your words are gentle, but words are easy. Here in Seralith we do not trust quickly. If you wish to remain, you must prove your worth. Until then you are nothing more than a guest under watch." Aaron nodded. "I understand, Your Majesty. I accept your judgment." The Queen leaned back in her throne. "Then you shall stay. My guards will not harm you unless you give reason. Tomorrow, you will begin the trials. If you succeed, you may walk among us as more than a stranger. If you fail, you will leave this world." The princess spoke softly for the first time. "Mother, is it fair to test one man so quickly?" The Queen's eyes did not leave Aaron. "Fairness is not the way of rulers. Strength and truth are the measures of one's worth. If this human cannot show them, then he has no place here." Aaron did not argue. He bowed again, his heart calm, though his path was uncertain. He was led away from the hall and into a chamber prepared for him. It was simple, with stone walls and a single bed. Yet through the window he could see the stars above Soralith. They seemed close, as if they were watching him. That night Aaron sat by the window, thinking. He knew he was alone on this world. No crew, no allies, no one to call for help. Yet he felt no fear. He had come for this, to show that humans were more than wanderers of the stars. He whispered to himself, "Tomorrow I will begin. Tomorrow I will show them." Morning light filled the city of Soralith. The sun rose bright and clear, painting the tall towers in shades of gold. Birds with long silver wings glided across the sky, calling out in soft cries that echoed between the stone walls. The streets were already alive, with merchants setting up stalls and children running along the wide paths. But in the palace, silence and tension ruled. Today was the beginning of the humans' trial. Aaron stood in the courtyard surrounded by guards. His simple uniform looked worn compared to the bright armor of the Soralith warriors. Yet he stood tall, his hands steady at his sides, his face calm. The queen sat on a raised seat, her crown shining faintly in the sun. The princess was beside her, watching with eyes full of both doubt and curiosity. Many nobles filled the balcony above, eager to see how the stranger from Earth would fare. The queen's voice carried across the courtyard. "Human, today you will begin the trials. You say you come in peace, you say you wish to learn. Words alone cannot prove a man. In Soralith, strength, wisdom, and courage are the marks of worth. You must show all three. If you fail, you will leave this land. Do you accept these terms?" Aaron bowed his head. "I accept, your majesty." The queen raised her hand. "Then let the first trial begin." The puzzle of runes, the guards led Aaron into a vast chamber deep inside the palace. The walls were covered in glowing symbols that pulsed faintly like living light. In the center of the room stood a large stone table. Upon it lay pieces of crystal carved with the same strange runes. An elder of Soralith stepped forward. His robe was long, his hair white, and his eyes sharp. "These are the runes of our ancestors," he said. "They hold wisdom older than our kingdom. Few outside our people can read them. Your task is to place the crystals in order and awaken the light of truth. Fail, and the chamber will remain in darkness." Aaron studied the crystals. He did not know their language, but he noticed patterns. The runes curved in shapes that repeated like music. Some were sharp, others soft, and together they seemed to tell a rhythm. He remembered his training on Earth, where he had studied languages and codes from many cultures. With patience, he picked up one crystal and placed it at the center. Time passed. The nobles whispered among themselves, certain the human would fail. Even the elder crossed his arms, expecting little. But slowly Aaron arranged the pieces, following the flow of their shapes. When he placed the last crystal, the table glowed bright. A line of light spread across the walls, connecting every rune into a great pattern. The chamber filled with a soft hum like a song. The elder stepped back in surprise. "It cannot be. He has unlocked the song of the runes." The queen's face remained calm, but her eyes flickered with interest. "The first trial is complete," she said. "The human has shown wisdom. Now he must show strength." The arena test Aaron was led into the great arena of Soralith. It was a wide circle of stone open to the sky, surrounded by thousands of citizens who had gathered to watch. The ground was marked with scars of past battles. Tall gates stood at the far end, and behind them roared machines built for combat. A commander of Soralith stepped forward. His armor was red, his spear long and sharp. His voice rang out so all could hear. "The human will face the trial of the arena. He must stand against our machines of war. If he survives, he proves his courage. If he falls, his story ends." The gates opened. From the shadows emerged two great machines shaped like beasts. Their metal legs struck the ground with thunder. Their eyes glowed red and their jaws dripped sparks. The crowd cheered at the sight, certain that no human could survive. Aaron stood ready, his hands empty. He had no spear, no shield, only his mind and his body. When the machines charged, the ground shook. Aaron ran to the side, quick and light, avoiding the first strike. He studied their movement, noticing how their steps slowed when they turned. He picked up a broken spear from the ground and used it not to strike but to guide the beasts into each other's path. The machines crashed, sparks flying. The crowd gasped. Aaron climbed onto one of the beasts using its own armor as a ladder. With steady hands, he pulled wires loose and struck at weak points. The machine collapsed, smoke rising from its broken frame. The second beast lunged, but Aaron rolled aside and thrust the broken spear into its joint. With a loud screech, it fell to the ground and lay still. The arena went silent for a moment, then erupted in shouts. Some cheered, others cried out in disbelief. The queen lifted her hand and silence fell again. "The human has faced the machines and survived," she declared. "He has shown strength. But strength and wisdom alone are not enough. He must now show courage of the heart." The night in the desert that evening, Aaron was taken beyond the city walls. Before him stretched the great desert of shifting sands. The sky above was red with the setting sun, and the wind howled across the dunes. A guard spoke firmly. "Spend the night in the desert. Return by dawn. Survive the cold, the storms, and the creatures that hunt in darkness. This is the trial of the heart." Aaron nodded and stepped into the sands. The guards watched until he was a small figure fading into the horizon. The desert was vast and cruel. As night fell, the heat of day vanished, replaced by bitter cold. The wind cut like knives, and the stars above shone sharp and endless. Aaron built a small fire with dried plants he found beneath the rocks. He wrapped his arms around himself, listening to the cries of unseen creatures. At midnight, the ground shook. From the darkness rose a beast of sand, its body like a serpent, its eyes burning yellow. It circled Aaron, its hiss loud in the night. Aaron did not run. He stood firm, holding a torch from the fire. The beast lunged, but Aaron thrust the torch forward. The flame startled it, and it shrank back into the dunes, vanishing with a roar. When dawn came, Aaron walked back toward the city. His clothes were torn, his face marked with dust, but his eyes were steady. The gates opened, and he stepped inside. The people who had doubted him stared in silence. The queen rose from her throne as he entered the palace courtyard. "The human has completed the 3 trials," she said. "He has shown wisdom, strength, and courage. He is no longer a mere guest. He is a man of worth among us." The princess smiled faintly, though she quickly hid it. The nobles whispered, uneasy but unable to deny what they had seen. The queen's gaze stayed on Aaron, her voice calm but carrying weight. "Your path with us is not yet finished, traveler from Earth. The trials have ended, but a greater test awaits. Our land is not at peace. Enemies gather at our borders. Soon we will see if your spirit shines in war as it has in trial." Aaron bowed deeply. "I will not fail, your majesty." That night, as he rested in his chamber, he looked again through the window at the stars above. He thought of Earth, far away, and of the future that now tied him to Siralith. He whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning." The days after the trials passed with quiet tension in the city of Siralith. The people still whispered about the human who had solved the runes, faced the war machines, and survived the desert. Some looked at him with respect, some with doubt, and many with silent fear. Outsiders had always been kept away, and now one walked freely among them. Aaron spent his mornings walking the gardens of the palace, where tall trees with silver leaves whispered in the wind. At times he saw the princess there, reading scrolls or tending to the small crystal flowers that grew along the path. She rarely spoke, but when her eyes met his, there was curiosity that she did not try to hide. But the peace was short. The first signs of trouble one evening. The palace shook with the sound of horns. Guards rushed through the halls, their armor clattering. Aaron was in his chamber when a soldier burst in. "The queen calls for you," the guard said. Aaron followed quickly, his steps echoing in the long corridors. In the great hall, the queen stood tall, her face calm, though her eyes burned with concern. Around her, nobles and commanders argued in sharp voices. "They move too fast," one shouted. "Our borders will not hold," another replied. "We should not have let the humans stay," muttered a third. The queen raised her hand and the hall fell silent. She turned to Aaron. "Stranger of Earth, you have earned a place in my court, but now you will see the true weight of our world. A rival force gathers at our border. They call themselves the Kale, and they come with weapons our people have never faced. Reports say their ships burn the skies and their soldiers march without fear. If we cannot stop them, Siralith will fall." The princess stepped forward. Her voice was soft but clear. "Mother, what can be done?" The queen's gaze shifted to Aaron. "This is the greater test I spoke of. You have shown wisdom, strength, and courage in trial. Now you must show them in battle. Tell us, human, do your people know war?" Aaron's eyes were steady. "Yes, your majesty. On Earth, history has been shaped by war. We learned to fight even when outnumbered, to plan even when weak, and to endure when all seemed lost. If you will allow me, I will help your commanders prepare. The hall stirred with whispers. A noble scoffed loudly. We will trust the fate of Siralith to an outsider? But the queen silenced him with a look. The human will speak. If his words hold wisdom, we will listen. If not, he will return to silence. A different way of war. In the days that followed, Aaron walked the training grounds with the Siralith soldiers. He studied their weapons, their armor, and their tactics. The Siralith were strong and disciplined, but their ways of war were rigid. They fought in straight lines, relying on strength and tradition. Aaron gathered the commanders one evening and spoke plainly. Your soldiers are skilled, but your enemies will not fight in the way you expect. The Kel use speed, deception, and sudden strikes. If you stand still, you will fall. You must learn to move as they move. You must use traps, decoys, and the land itself. Some commanders frowned. One said, These are the ways of cowards. Honor demands we meet our enemy face to face. Aaron did not raise his voice. Honor is important, but survival is greater. If you cling to old ways, your enemy will break you. If you adapt, you will win. The queen, who had listened in silence, finally spoke. Let the human show us. Give him a unit. If he fails, we lose nothing. If he succeeds, we gain a chance. And so Aaron was given command of a small group of soldiers. They looked at him with doubt, but he met their eyes with calm strength. I am not here to replace your ways, he told them. I am here to add to them. Trust me for one battle, and I will show you what humans can do. The enemy strikes. The warning came at dawn. A messenger rode into the city, his cloak torn, his face pale. The Kale have crossed the border. Their ships burn the plains. Villages fall in their path. The queen ordered her forces to gather. Thousands of soldiers marched out of the city, their armor shining in the sun. Aaron rode with his small unit, the princess watching silently from the walls as the army left. The battlefield was a wide plain with tall grass that moved like waves in the wind. Across the horizon, the Kale came. Their ships floated above the ground, metal beasts that hummed with power. Their soldiers wore black armor, their weapons glowing red. They moved in perfect rhythm like one body, and their cries shook the air. The Siralith soldiers formed their lines, shields raised, spears ready. Aaron and his small unit hid among the hills at the flank. His heart was steady, his mind clear. He whispered to his soldiers, Wait until they are close. Do not fight them in the way they expect. The battle began with fire. The Kyle ships rained down bolts of energy, and the Siralith lines staggered. The ground burned, smoke rising in thick clouds. The Kyle soldiers charged, swift and ruthless. Aaron gave the signal. His unit lit fires in the grass, sending smoke into the sky and confusing the enemy's sight. They set traps in the ground, pits covered with leaves and ropes tied to pull riders from their mounts. They used mirrors taken from the city to flash light into the eyes of the Kale, breaking their formation. The Kale, who had expected a simple clash, faltered. Their lines broke as confusion spread. In that moment, the Siralith commanders saw the chance and led their soldiers forward with renewed strength. The battlefield turned. Aaron himself fought with calm focus. He carried only a short blade and his courage. When a Kale soldier charged, he did not meet force with force, but sidestepped, striking at weak joints in the armor. His soldiers followed his example, learning to use speed instead of strength. The enemy retreated by sunset, leaving broken machines and fallen warriors behind. The plain was scarred, but Siralith still stood. The aftermath that night, the army returned to the city. Fires were lit, drums beat, and the people cheered. But in the palace hall, the queen's voice was solemn. We have won a battle, she said, but not the war. The Kale will return, stronger than before. Yet today we learned that we can adapt and we can endure. The human has shown us new ways, and for that we owe him respect. The nobles, though still uneasy, bowed their heads. Even the commanders who had doubted Aaron now looked at him with new eyes. The princess smiled openly for the first time, her voice soft as she said, You saved many lives today. Aaron bowed. It was not me alone. It was your people who found the strength to change. Together we can face what comes next. The queen studied him with her sharp eyes, then spoke with a voice that carried across the hall. Your trials proved your worth, but this battle proved your heart. You are no longer just a guest. You are now a defender of Siralith. But know this, human, greater storms are coming. The Kyle will not rest, and neither must we. Aaron nodded. I will stand with you no matter what storms rise. That night, as he looked again at the stars from his chamber, he felt the weight of what lay ahead. He had come as a traveler, But now he was bound to Saralith by honor and by choice. The trials had tested him, the battle had proven him, and the future would demand even more. He whispered to himself, "This fight has only begun." The city of Saralith prepared for war. Days had passed since the first clash with the Kale, and though the enemy had retreated, everyone knew they would return. The Kale were not a people who accepted defeat. They would come back stronger, with greater numbers and greater fury. The queen stood at the highest tower of her palace, looking out over her kingdom. Soldiers filled the courtyards below, training from dawn to night. Blacksmiths hammered iron, shaping new spears and shields. Engineers repaired broken defenses and built machines that could hurl stones across the sky. Aaron walked among them every day. He spoke to the commanders, trained with the soldiers, and shared knowledge from Earth. He taught them how to fight in smaller groups, how to set ambushes, and how to use the land itself as a weapon. Slowly, the Saralith soldiers learned to move with more flexibility, yet doubt still lingered. Many nobles whispered that trusting a human was dangerous. Others argued that tradition should not be changed. But when the queen spoke, all fell silent. "The human has shown wisdom and strength. His ways may be new, but they have saved us once. We will trust him again." The calm before the storm on. The night before the Kale's return, the city was quiet. Torches burned on the walls, their flames flickering in the wind. The people gathered in their homes, speaking in low voices, holding each other close. Children asked if the city would fall, and parents gave comfort, though fear filled their eyes. Aaron stood in the garden of the palace, gazing at the stars. The princess walked toward him, her steps soft on the stone path. She carried no crown, only a simple cloak over her shoulders. "You do not rest," she said gently. Aaron shook his head. "I cannot. Tomorrow will decide more than a battle. It may decide the future of your world, and if your world falls, I will have failed my purpose." The princess looked at him with quiet strength. "You are one man, Aaron. You carry no army of your own. Yet already you have done more than many thought possible. Even my mother sees it." "I see it as well." Aaron gave a faint smile. "On Earth, we were often outnumbered. But humans survived because we refused to give in, even when hope was small. That is what I will hold to tomorrow." The princess lowered her gaze. "Then may the stars guide you." The Kale returned at dawn. The sky darkened with shapes. Ships of the Kale filled the horizon, their black forms blotting out the rising sun. Their engines thundered, shaking the air. The people of Saralith climbed to the walls, their faces pale with fear. The ground trembled as the Kale army approached, row upon row of soldiers in black armor, their weapons glowing red. The queen stood upon the balcony of the palace, her voice carrying across the city. "People of Saralith, today the Kale come to test our strength, but we are not weak. We are not broken. We stand together, and together we will endure." The people cheered, their voices rising to meet the roar of the Kale. Aaron stood with his unit near the front lines. His soldiers were nervous, but his calm presence steadied them. He looked across the plain at the enemy and spoke clearly. "Remember what you have learned. Do not meet them with fear. Use the land. Use your mind. Trust each other and you will live." The horns of war sounded. The battle began. The sky burns. The Kale ships opened fire first. Bolts of red energy rained down, striking the ground in bursts of flame. Walls cracked, towers shook, and the earth split. Yet the Saralith archers, guided by Aaron's advice, did not waste their arrows. They waited until the Kale ships drew closer, then loosed volleys tipped with crystal that pierced the weaker joints of the machines. On the ground, the Kale soldiers charged with terrifying speed. Their black armor gleamed as they struck against the Saralith shields. The clash was loud as thunder, metal striking metal, voices crying out in rage and pain. Aaron led his unit to the side, striking not at the strongest points, but at the unguarded flanks. He ordered fires set in the grass, sending smoke into the wind to blind the enemy. He used mirrors to reflect sunlight into their eyes, breaking their rhythm. Traps hidden beneath the earth snapped shut, pulling Kale soldiers into pits. The Saralith commanders, watching from the walls, were shocked to see the Kale falter. The rigid lines of the enemy broke apart under the chaos. Saralith soldiers seized the moment, charging forward with new strength. The heart of the battle, but the Kale were not easily broken. From their ships came greater machines, tall as towers, with legs that crushed stone and arms that struck like hammers. One of them marched toward the gates of Saralith, each step shaking the ground. The walls cracked under its strikes and fear spread among the defenders. Aaron saw it and knew the city would not stand if the machine broke through. He called to his unit. "With me. We cannot wait for others. We must stop it here." The soldiers followed, though fear was in their eyes. They moved across the battlefield, dodging fire and falling stone until they reached the great machine. Aaron climbed its leg, holding tight as it shook. He found the joints where metal met metal and drove his blade into the gaps. Sparks burst and the machine roared like a living beast. Below, his soldiers fought to distract the enemy, drawing fire away from him. Aaron reached the top, found the hatch, and forced it open. Inside, glowing wires filled the space. He pulled them loose one by one, ignoring the heat and the pain. At last the machine shuddered, staggered, and fell with a crash that shook the plane. The people on the walls cried out in triumph. The queen herself rose from her seat, her eyes bright with pride. The turning tide with the fall of the great machine, the battle began to shift. The Kyle soldiers wavered for the first time. Their lines bent as Saralith warriors filled with new courage pressed forward. Yet the Kale commander appeared then, a figure in black armor taller than any man, his weapon glowing with fire. He cut through soldiers with ease, his voice ringing like iron. "Saralith will burn. No human trick can save you." Aaron stepped forward. His body was weary, his hands bleeding from the machine, but his spirit was unbroken. He faced the commander with steady eyes. "You will not take this world," the commander laughed, a harsh sound. "You are only one man." Aaron raised his blade. "One is enough." The fight was fierce. The Kale commander struck with power, each blow shaking the ground. But Aaron moved with speed, dodging, countering, striking at weak points. He used everything he had learned, every skill, every instinct. At last, with a final strike to the joint of the armor, the commander fell. The Kale soldiers froze, their leader defeated. The Saralith army roared and charged, driving them back. The enemy fled toward their ships, retreating into the horizon. Victory. When the battle ended, the field was scarred and filled with smoke. Many had fallen, yet the city still stood. The people of Saralith raised their voices in triumph, their cheers echoing across the plain. The queen stood before her people, her voice strong. "Today we faced the storm and did not fall. We stood as one and we endured. And we must honor the man who showed us the path. Aaron of Earth, you have saved our kingdom." The people cheered his name, their doubt finally broken. The princess looked at him with eyes full of light, and for the first time she did not hide her smile. Aaron bowed before the queen. "It was not I alone. Your people fought with courage. Together we won." The queen nodded, her voice quiet but full of weight. "Together, yes, but you were the spark that lit the fire. Without you, we would not stand here now." That night the city shone with torches and music. The people celebrated, though the queen reminded them that war was not yet ended. The Kale would return again one day, but for now Saralith had won its greatest battle. Aaron stood once more in the garden, looking at the stars. The princess came to his side, her voice soft. "You are not only a traveler anymore. You are part of us," Aaron smiled faintly. "Then I will stay, and I will fight for this world as if it were my own." The stars above seemed brighter, as if they too witnessed the promise. The city of Saralith glowed with soft light in the days after the great battle. The smoke had cleared, and the people slowly rebuilt what was broken. Streets were repaired, walls were strengthened, and fields were made ready again for planting. Though scars of war remained, there was also new hope. For the first time in many years, the people walked through their markets with laughter. Children played with wooden swords, pretending to be warriors who had stood on the walls. Songs were sung in the taverns, and families gave thanks to the queen for her guidance. But whenever the people spoke of the victory, one name returned again and again. Aaron of Earth. The stranger who had arrived with no army, no riches, and no title, yet had changed the fate of their world. The weight of leadership. Aaron did not rest after the battle. Instead, he worked beside the soldiers to repair the defenses. He spoke with engineers about how to strengthen the gates. He showed farmers how to build simple shelters in the fields so they could hide if the enemy returned. The queen watched him often from her balcony. She saw how the people gathered around him. They listened to his words with respect, and many had begun to follow his teachings without question. One evening she spoke with her council. "The people honor him," she said. "He has no crown, yet they see him as a leader." A noble shook his head. "He is an outsider, my queen, a man from another world." Can he truly guide Siralith? Another noble, older and wiser, replied calmly. Sometimes it takes an outsider to remind us of what we forget. He does not seek power. That is why he is trusted. The queen gave a slow nod. She had seen the truth of those words herself. The princess and the human in the gardens of the palace, Aaron often walked with the princess. At first she had looked at him with suspicion, as many others had. But now her eyes were softer. She asked him questions about Earth, about its oceans, mountains, and skies. Your world sounds so different, she said one night as they looked at the stars, yet also so much the same. You had wars there too, did you not? Aaron nodded. Yes, wars that lasted for years. But we also built peace after them. That is the lesson I try to bring here. War is not the end. It is only the test. The princess looked at him quietly. Do you wish to return to Earth? Aaron hesitated. For a long moment he did not speak. At last he said, When I first came here, all I wanted was to find a way home. But now I feel I have a place here too, a reason to stay. The princess lowered her gaze and a faint smile touched her lips. The trial of the fallen, though the Kale had been driven back, some of their soldiers had been captured alive. The queen ordered a trial, for Siralith had always valued justice over revenge. The people gathered in the great square. The Kale prisoners stood in chains, their faces hidden behind black masks. Many of the citizens shouted for punishment, but the queen raised her hand for silence. We are not the Kale, she said. We will not answer cruelty with cruelty. These prisoners will face judgment, but it will be fair. One Kale soldier spoke, his voice harsh. You think mercy makes you strong. It makes you weak. We will rise again and you will fall. The crowd murmured angrily, but Aaron stepped forward. His voice was calm. Strength is not in cruelty. Strength is in choosing not to become what you fight. You will be treated with justice even though you offer none. The people grew quiet. Some still demanded punishment, but many nodded in agreement. The queen ordered that the prisoners be held until peace could be decided with their leaders. It was not an easy choice, but it showed that Siralith was a kingdom of honor. The gift of knowledge Aaron began teaching not only the soldiers but also the scholars. He drew maps of Earth to show how humans had built cities, how they had created tools to move across oceans, and how they had used writing to pass wisdom from one age to another. The scholars listened with amazement. One of them said, Your people may not have magic, but you have built wonders of your own. Perhaps we can learn from you, just as you have learned from us. So Aaron shared ideas of farming, medicine, and defense. He showed how clean water could be stored, how herbs could be mixed for healing, and how villages could be protected with simple walls. To the Siralith people, these were new and powerful gifts. In return, they taught him about their crystals, their ways of channeling energy, and the stories of their ancestors. Aaron listened with deep respect, for he knew knowledge was strongest when shared. The Council of Unity weeks later, the queen called a great council. Leaders from nearby lands were invited to Siralith. They had all heard of the Kale attack, and many feared that their own kingdoms would be next. They gathered in the Hall of Stars, a chamber where light from the sky shone through a crystal dome. The queen stood before them dressed in silver robes, her voice clear and strong. The Kyle will return, she said, not only against Siralith but against all who live free. If we remain divided, we will fall one by one. But if we stand together, we may endure. Some leaders hesitated. Old rivalries ran deep. One ruler said, Why should we risk our armies for a war that is not yet upon us? Aaron stepped forward then. His voice carried across the hall. I come from another world, but I have seen the Kyle with my own eyes. They will not stop with one city. They will not stop with one kingdom. If you wait, they will destroy you one by one. Unity is your only chance. The hall grew silent. The leaders looked at each other, and slowly they began to nod. One by one, they agreed to form an alliance. It was the first time in generations that so many kingdoms had chosen to stand as one. The queen looked at Aaron and gave a small smile. His words had turned fear into strength. The ceremony of honor, a month after the battle, when the city had healed and the people had regained their spirit, the queen declared a day of honor. The great square was filled with banners, music, and light. Citizens from every corner of the land came to witness it. At the center of the square stood a tall platform. Upon it were the queen, the princess, and Aaron. The people waited in silence as the queen raised her hand. People of Siralith, she said, we gather not only to remember the battle we have won, but to honor the one who led us through it. Aaron of Earth, step forward. Aaron walked slowly to her side. He wore no crown, no jewels, only the simple armor he had fought in. The queen held out a sword, its blade shining with crystal light. You came to us as a stranger, yet you gave us your courage, your wisdom, and your strength. Without you, we would not stand here today. In the name of Siralith, I grant you the title of Guardian of the Realm. The people erupted in cheers. Aaron bowed his head, touched the sword, and spoke humbly. I did only what I could. The true strength was always in your people. The princess stepped forward then, placing a silver cloak upon his shoulders. Her voice was soft but clear. You are no longer only a traveler from Earth. You are one of us now. The people cheered again, their voices rising like thunder. The future ahead. That night the city celebrated with feasts, songs, and dances. Fires burned in great circles, and children sang of the guardian who had saved them. Aaron stood on the walls, looking out at the horizon. The princess came to stand beside him. You have given us hope, she said. But do you believe the Kyle will return? Aaron's gaze was steady. Yes, they will not forget this defeat. But when they return, Siralith will not stand alone. The kingdoms will be ready, and so will I. The princess looked at him with quiet pride. Then whatever comes, we will face it together. The stars shone above them, endless and bright. In that moment, Aaron felt no longer a man lost between worlds, but a guardian with a purpose. He had found not only honor, but also a home. And though battles might come again, the spirit of Siralith was unbroken. United, they would endure.